The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
All right, a huge show lined up. The top position battles in fall camp. Why do we want to hit that now instead of previously in fall camp? Because I know a little bit more, and I can offer a little bit of insight as to the key positions that are up for grabs. And there's not a lot of them, which is a good sign. Also, we will have Jordan Ross credits James Pearson, Byron Young for committing to the Vols. How much praise does Tim Banks deserve? Auburn is becoming a real threat on the recruiting trail. And are we talking SEC or Big Ten in 5 years? Which will be the better conference? Because I think Caleb and I agree that it's going to have an AL-NL feel. So welcome to the program. We'll be with you for the next 90 minutes or so, and we'll discuss all of those topics. Hopefully you'll be entertained and informed. We are represented by Banks & Jones. Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, play to win, Banks & Jones. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing, Dave?
Never better. Are you ready to get to some position battles? And we know way more now than we used to, correct?
Yep, I got my list set. Let's roll. You tell me if I'm crazy for these.
All right, 4 Downs is now, and it's brought to you by our good friend Medicare Misty.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
So here's the way I'm going to do this, Caleb. I'm going to give you the final one, and then we'll discuss whichever ones you want to. But I'm going to throw my 4 at you first. How about that? Are you ready?
All right, let's roll. Let's see it.
Okay, number 1, it's brought to you by our friends Medicare Misty, a free Medicare help and evaluation and advice. What down is it, Cooper Mays?
Coop here, first down.
Thank you, Coop. It's backup quarterback. Tennessee right now, we all know that the season's nil if something were to happen to Nico Iamaleava. We all know that would be the end of it. But what if he's just out for a drive or he's out for a quarter, which is very possible in this offense? I believe backup quarterback's significant, and I believe that at least in the first half of the season, if not further, it'll be Gaston Moore.
That's a very intriguing one. It's one I didn't think of because I was only thinking for starters, but you're right. And I wouldn't have considered it a position battle 2 days ago, but the fact that they brought out Jake Merklinger and Gaston Moore when Merklinger was there in the spring leads me to believe that they are not happy with his development to this point. And
well, not even more of an optimistic view of it. I think they're really happy with Gaston Moore being a good soldier and working hard and learning the offense. I mean, goodness gracious, if you've got
you are the biggest Gaston Moore cheerleader I have ever met.
I don't mean to be that. I just have a lot of respect for that type of guy in this offense, and that can be because I don't think you're going to have the days of where you fall back on a Peyton Manning. So you better have these guys that appreciate the opportunity, appreciate throwing the ball around in practice, because they may never get that opportunity in a game.
I guarantee you guys, Dave was probably pushing for Jim Bob Cooter in 2005 over Rick Clausen or Eric Ainge. You made the case that Gaston Moore should have started last year a couple of days ago. So I'm just saying, I think you just love Gaston Moore, Dave. Come on, he's a walk-on. There's no way they could want to build behind him as the backup.
Okay, maybe I do love Gaston Moore a little bit too much, but here I have second down.
Cooper Mays here, second down.
Being really specific here. Free safety and the other cornerback position, because Ricky Gibson's going to start at one, and I believe Boo Carter will start at the other. What do you make of those two positions?
So you got Ricky Gibson at the number 1 cornerback, and you got Boo Carter as the other safety.
Yes, so I'm being very specific. This is not your regular rundown of position battles before the season. We know more. I know more from being over there and talking to people. So I think those will be the two positions that are locked up. Maybe not Boo by the beginning of the year, but eventually. So how about the other two positions?
I think you're probably right. And I wouldn't have said this 2 days ago. I actually had safety on my list, but then I took it off because I thought Jacoby Thomas was going to lock down safety, but I'm getting the vibe that they're running him at cornerback, right? And even though he was a safety at MTSU, which means that the free safety spot is wide open because I don't know who's going to take it. If Jacoby Thomas is taking the cornerback spot, we already know Jermon McCoy, they're high on him. Jalen McMurray is a utility guy. I think that almost leads me to believe they don't have an answer at free safety in a concerning way.
Well, I think it's open. So, yeah, I think it's Jacoby Thomas. And I'm not trying to say that there's a concern there, but I think that's an interesting position battle, and I think he'll end up winning it. So what down are we on?
Going on the third down.
Third down.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Wherever Dante Thornton plays. Because we're not 100% sure if he's going to play slot or outside. And wherever he plays, I think based off the little bit we saw before he got hurt, he's going to be on the field. Yet I could project other players as starters there based off of how he played the first part of the field. So wherever Dante Thornton plays, I'm interested in that position battle. I'm buying tickets for that.
So I had on my list, I think we see eye to eye on a lot of things. On my list, I had number 2 wideout.
Well, I was going to get to fourth down, and you can do all yours. But what did you think about my
Dante Thornton? Mine is relative to Dante Thornton. That's why I'm talking about Dante Thornton specifically with this.
Sweet.
I had number 2 wideout because of Dante Thornton, because I don't think he's going to play in the slot, because I think the slot is Squirrel White's, period, in the story. I think Squirrel White has it locked up. We agree Brew McCoy is the number 1 wideout, right?
Yes.
I think what you're talking about is Dante Thornton to be the other wideout on the other side, the Alvin Harper type. I think that's where things are open. And I think it's down, and you tell me if I'm wrong on this, Dave. I think it's down to Dante Thornton, Chris Brazel, Mike Matthews for that other spot.
I think Brazel's going to play the slot position, but I don't want to get caught up into that because I felt like we did with Dante Thornton. You certainly look at him and he has the size to play either outside or inside. I don't know why.
Is Squirrel getting kicked to the curb?
Well, let's discuss.
Is he getting knocked out of the tree?
Let's discuss Squirrel. Will he be able to find a nut this season? It's brought to you by Medicare Misty.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Free advice there. Tough questions on Medicare Misty. Yes, I think you're worried about Squirrel getting squeezed out a little bit of this because, listen, I'm not saying that he's this guy, but let's remember this, Caleb. Players used to stay hungry. Why? Financial reasons, right? Make their families better. Now, a guy like Squirrel, I'm not saying I've heard this. I'm not reporting this, Caleb, so you'll back me, right? If somebody questions me. But a guy like Squirrel, if he's popular because of his name, he's making a couple of plays, he's young, he's got a great smile. If you feel like you've made it in college, and I hope he doesn't feel like that because he's got a future making a paycheck in the NFL.
So you think he's taking it lightly this year to protect his NFL asset, and that's what's going to push him out?
No, I'm not even saying that, and I'm not even saying him specifically, but I wonder if some players say to themselves, because we've talked about some players are getting $1 million a year, if some players say, hey, I'm a little fat and happy. Let's face it, Aaron Rodgers, it takes him $40 million to get fat and happy. it'd probably only take us a couple of mil, right?
Yeah. No, that's true. Aaron Rodgers got 50 mil, and then he phoned in his last year with Green Bay.
Well, so I mean, do you wonder? I wonder why Squirrel's not a bigger part of the conversation. I'm throwing that out there as a possibility. I'm not trying to lead anybody to believe that. I want to go to the message board while you chop this out a bit in your mind, Caleb. What do you think?
I think Squirrel's already so penciled in, they don't feel like they need to talk about him. It's like Javonte Spraggins is not a big part of the conversation because he's starting at right guard, and we know he's starting at right guard.
Yeah. Other potential position battles that you're looking at?
You're not going to hit me with fourth down on that?
Oh, yeah, fourth down.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
What should people do, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Have you hit like and subscribe yet? All right, what do you got?
All right, I'm going to complete this pass Casey Clausen 4th and 19 style since it's fourth down. Throwback 2003 Alabama. So I'm going to throw one big one is place kicker. There's a position battle for place kicker that is wide open right now. Do we know who's leading in that, Dave?
I've been told it's Josh Turbyville.
Okay, so Josh Turbyville is the leader.
Yes.
One that there should be a position battle for.
Is he getting excited?
Left,
yeah, you're warming up your hands there? Okay.
Left guard. Now, they may think Andre Carrick is locked in at left guard. I refuse to believe it. I am very, very, very low on him. He never got better as the season went on last year. He didn't have the Dante Thornton injury excuse. And I'm thinking maybe a Jackson Lampley could emerge and make a push there. Vyson Lang. I can't imagine Andre Carrick is locked into that spot without any competition.
I'm not going to argue with you there. If a younger guy emerged and was a better player, then that would be absolutely huge for Tennessee. Instead of having to rely on a guy who's average for another season. And I think he's slightly above average, but we're talking C+.
I got a question. You may be able to answer this.
Lay it on me.
We know that a lot of the transfer portal moves they made after 2022, they made with NIL money, right? They were like, here's some NIL cash, come. Is there pressure to make those guys work because they cobbled NIL money to get them? To say like, oh, we're going to start them even if somebody behind them may be a little bit better?
I don't know that there's pressure to pay them like in the NFL. An owner would say, hey, I'm paying this guy $1 kajillion. You need to pay him. But I think there's probably pressure in that if you don't play him, then he leaves and you have to pay somebody else. So I think you've got a lot of people tied up. I'm with the message board. It's about time for Sean Umarov to have an impact. It's about time for Jackson Lampley to have an impact. So those guys have their opportunity. I don't think that left guard is Andre Curig's to have and have solely. So I agree with Caleb wholeheartedly. He should be coming in with the attitude of, let's get this thing done. I'm going to be a really good player instead of a guy who just gets by. Portions of the program brought to you by Don Self at State Farm in the Chattanooga area. Customer service still matters when you're trying to make that claim. Go to donself.net right there, donself.net, or call 423-396-2126, 423-396-2126, Don Self, donself.net. The show represented by Banks and Jones. And in 60 seconds, I'm going to tell you who's Tennessee's most important non-starter, non-first team player. Who's the guy on offense and defense? We do that in 60 seconds. Less, actually. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? Banks and Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. All right, I want to lean heavily on the message board because I want your thoughts. Who is Tennessee's most important non-starter? So I'm taking any argument for a guy who could push for a starting position off the table. Caleb, I wrote about mine. If you check out offthehooksports.com, let me get your thoughts on who is Tennessee's most important non-starter.
I am going to say, see, this is very, very tough for me because some of these players, it's like, do we consider them starters or are they rotational guys? So just a question on that for a minute. Interior defensive line, like they go like 5 deep. Aren't they all kind of co-starters? Amari Thomas, Elijah Simmons, Jackson Moy, like Omar Norman Lott.
I just kind of took those out
Okay.
because to me, it's more important who's in the end of the game, and it's going to be whoever's freshest. So I really just took the defensive tackles out. I didn't know any other way to do it.
I felt that too. I'm going to say, Dylan stole it from me on the message board. I was going to say Vyson Lang. That guy has got to emerge on the offensive line because Tennessee desperately needs a backup center because we love Cooper on our show. Cooper has battled injuries throughout his Tennessee career. Team misses a game or two. Vyson Lang's got to be ready to step in.
All right. So is that your vote as well, Vyson Lang?
Yep. My vote is Vyson Lang.
All right, I'm going with Joshua Josephs. And here's why. If something happens to James Pierce, and I certainly hope it doesn't, not predicting anything, but you need that elite pass rusher from the Leo position, don't you, Caleb?
Yes, the only reason I broke with you on this is is it Joshua Josephs actually starting? I thought he was going to start opposite James Pierce.
If they do that, that's great. That's a great position battle to be in. I think he's better. I think Joshua Josephs is better a little bit standing up. So I think whoever is the other guy to bring the pressure is going to be
a bigger
key.
one.
Yeah, let's remember this. Will Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
He had a fantastic junior season, but people didn't credit him with as much because he was so accounted for. So don't rule out the chance that James Pierce could have fewer sacks than he had last year, what he had, I believe, 12, and still have a huge impact on the season. Will Anderson was also great against the run. I'm not sure James Pierce has that, but the guy on the other side or the guy backing up James Pierce, they've got to get pressure from both sides.
Okay, so I could see that. So I guess, so let's see, how does Tennessee run their units? They run a nose tackle, another defensive tackle, the Leo spot, and then I guess the other spot is like a defensive end that kind of is a bigger guy that could play in the middle, that always plays with his hand on the line, right?
Usually has his hands down.
Okay, so that's like where the Dominic Bailey or the Tyree West come in, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I see what you're saying. So they really only ever have one true just edge rusher out on the field.
Well, unless it's a passing situation. I mean,
okay.
You might have two on each side, but we might be overly complicating this topic as well.
It because it's complicated. Let's call it what it is. The reason it's so complicated is like it's honestly more of a 3-3-5. Like everyone says 4-3, 3-4, 4-2-5. I'm like, I feel like defenses now are like 3-1-2-5. That's what they run. 3 down linemen, an edge rusher that can play hand off or hand on, 2 linebackers in, and then 5 defensive backs.
Here's the way I'm going to post this, unless you change my mind. Who is the Vols' best non-starter? Vyson Lang, Joshua Josephs, any backup quarterback.
Oh, their best non-starter or their most important? That's a different question.
Most important. We're going to say most important.
Their best non-starter is Mike Matthews.
Okay. So he's not the most important this year because they have receivers. So we're going with this. And I feel confident that this is the direction to go. So there you can vote on the YouTube page. Who is Tennessee's most important non-starter? Vyson Lang, Joshua Josephs, any backup quarterback. Now, you mentioned Mike Matthews, but how about one of the receivers being significant? Maybe it's Nimrod, because Tennessee has had a receiver go down each of their last 2 seasons. So, Caleb, while that we talk about Dante Thornton, and we think that I was on a Nashville radio station this morning, we believe that Josh Heupel is going to settle on those 3, but he's had to use a 4th by injury's sake. And Tennessee likes to throw the ball a lot. So what kind of battle do you see there?
I hate to say this because I like the guy. I think Nimrod and Caleb Webb are the odd men out in this offense because you have Brew McCoy, Squirrel White, and then you have either Dante Thornton, Chris Brazel, or Mike Matthews, whichever. So if somebody gets hurt, there's still 2 other people you can go to between that 3. So
I'm gonna push back on Nimrod. I think that Nimrod can be a solid player. The outside receiver they just had left had the diving catch that everybody loved.
Ramel Keaton.
Yeah, Ramel Keaton. I think he can be a Ramel Keaton. That's my ceiling. Nimrod. Now the question is there room for a guy that has that ceiling at the time?
That's what I mean. They're so loaded at receiver now. There's so much talent.
Well, he could be surpassed. But I like him to step in and play a role that Ramel Keaton played, and that was a very necessary role at the time, considering the injuries at the position.
Yeah, it was. I think that's why they went for Chris Brazel. I think they think Chris Brazel's better at that.
I believe that Chris Brazel is physically better than Nimrod. I'm just saying if the opportunity's there, until that man enters the transfer portal, I believe he'll be ready. Portions of the program.
I want to. I'm sorry. We need to bring up one thing because Derek did play it well. The most important non-starter is another guy they trotted out the other day, Jeremiah Thielander.
Very good one. Apex Apparel Group Design, 15% off your first order. Apex Apparel, they do so much more. A one-stop shop for all brand supply products, not just clothes, design, brand, market your way. Unique products to promote your business. Check out what I have on right now, my embroidered Off the Hook sports shirt, which looks fantastic. Call Tyler 865-919-3001. Get 15% off your first order. 865-919-3001. We definitely should have not left Thielander off that list. And as proof that he's important, Tim Banks corrected me on his name in front of everybody. So yeah. So that means that he's really important.
Oh my gosh. So is it Thielander or Tellander?
It's Thielander. Just for the record, it's Thielander. It's not Tellander. So how good can he be? I hope he's not very good this year, except on special teams, right? Because if he's very good, he looks like a Mike to me. So that's not, he would be playing in place of Keenan Pili. If he could play outside, I don't think he's as talented as we're both very high on Arian Carter. If he plays a lot this season, Caleb, I don't think that's good for the Vols. But if he gets ready for 2025 behind Pili, I think Tennessee's got something special in their hands.
Well, I get your point, but I would also argue that I think sometimes, am I crazy or are the days of 3 linebackers just dead in college football? Like, don't you sometimes put 3 linebackers on the field together still?
Well, in running situations, you will. I mean, he would be the perfect Sam backer, a strong side backer. But nowadays, he's not going to be able to cover another receiver or a very athletic tight end. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like, I don't know, maybe I feel like we as media members can't bring ourselves to accept like there's no such thing as a base 4-3 anymore.
Don't include me in that. I want to go back to the base 4-3. I don't understand why we're calling why we're making up another position, for goodness sake. But we're Star and Leo and all these other things. I'm sorry, but the nickel guy is just a smaller linebacker.
Yes. Or just a corner. See, my concept of nickel is just the guy that wasn't good enough to be one of the 2 starting cornerbacks or the 2 starting safeties. But you're right. It makes so confusing now with defenses because you talk about positionless basketball. It feels like there's positionless football on defense now, doesn't it?
Yes.
And
you don't have to have your hand down anymore. You don't, I think James Pierce plays a lot of times with his hand down just to make him a better football player because he knows that he could just bring havoc with his hand up. I think that he is really driven to be a great football player. And I just hope that that's able to happen because he is incredibly talented.
He is. Quick story real quick. Tennessee gave up a Hail Mary to lose to Florida in 2017, Butch Jones's last year. And in this changing day of college football where you need more defensive backs, Butch Jones was asked how he let that happen. And why didn't you put an extra defensive back out there? His exact quote, "We don't have a dime package."
Who said you don't have a dime package?
Butch Jones said that he doesn't have a dime package for Tennessee. Yeah.
Tennessee has top 10 odds to make the college football playoff. How high do the Vols rank? We'll share that list with you. Should they be even higher? We discuss with Caleb Calhoun and Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Fifth year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
23 F-150 Super Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
In just a second, I'm going to tell you why Tennessee has something more valuable to its football program than anything they could build on the river. And it's not even close. And he happens to wear a coaching outfit. I'll tell you who that is. Brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary with a wide variety, great selection, strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. Promo code HOOKED for 10% off. Jordan Ross said that James Pierce and Byron Young and their play and their development as Vols was a major factor in his decision to come to Tennessee. Jordan Ross is a major pickup. Why, Caleb? Because he was one of the top-rated players at his position. He came to Tennessee because of the development of Tennessee's defensive ends. A quote from Tim Banks, who did this from the beginning, wanted to build Tennessee's defense from the front back, which is what they have done. Does Tim Banks, Caleb, get enough credit for what he does and what he has done? Because statistically, a lot of the times the Vols defense is not good.
Tim Banks doesn't get near the credit for what he's done because people don't understand how Tim Banks structures his defense. And honestly, he structures his defense in a complementary way to Josh Heupel's offense that really hurts his own profile and maybe becoming a head coach one day.
Amen.
Yeah, because what people don't get is that I've told you guys before, it's very much the way Tony Dungy structured the Colts defense when he took over as head coach in 2002, and they built around Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis, which was they didn't care about how many yards they gave up. Their philosophy was, we know we're an offensive juggernaut. On defense, let's make you run a lot of plays to move the ball down the field to have to beat us. And that increases the odds that you'll turn the ball over. On top of that, if we get a lead, then you're forced into obvious passing downs, and we can unleash our edge rushers to attack you.
Preach.
That is why Byron Young went from working at a grocery store to becoming an all-SEC player and an NFL draft pick. That's why James Pierce now looks like the #1 NFL draft pick next year, because of how Banks structures the defense. What hurt Tennessee and the reason they struggled, I got no excuses for the secondary issue against South Carolina in 2022. That was horrible. 5 walk-ons could have done better than they played that game. But there were internal issues with Jeremy Banks that we know about. And on top of Tim Banks having to structure his defense that way, which is automatically going to make the secondary look bad, he also has to structure it building around a makeshift secondary, which took the biggest hit by far of any unit when Jeremy Pruitt left with all the transfers. Add to that the final thing, last year, he had a quarterback that was not a fit for Josh Heupel's offense, plus the injuries. I'm not going to put it all on Milton. Cooper Mays got hurt. Brew McCoy got hurt. So Tennessee's offense wasn't able to get the lead it's structured to get, that the defense is structured to build around. So Tim Banks actually had to adjust and go win certain games. Guys, with a defense not structured to do it, he beat Texas A&M. Tim Banks did with his coaching in that game, because he had to adjust to what Tennessee wasn't able to do offensively.
Agreed. And I don't want to get caught up too far in the X's and O's, but a guy that really likes to study ball, he does a lot of things up front that he doesn't get credit for in terms of stunts and twists. So he put James Pierce and Byron Young in a lot of great situations. Now, there's no questioning Pierce's talent, but if he were just in a straight up, let's go get him Mark Stoops type of offense, would Pierce be getting this type of pub as the #1 overall pick? No. Would Byron Young have been, where did he end up going in the draft, Caleb?
I think he was a 3rd round pick,
Third or 4th. I mean, come on. If I told you that Byron Young was going to go in the middle of the NFL draft before his final season, you would have laughed out loud.
Yeah. The guy was a junior college transfer who walked on to the junior college, and we thought he was just a random addition. You're absolutely right. This is what Tim Banks said this on Tuesday. He said he likes to structure his defense. Now, it's funny because Tim Banks is partially the defensive backs coach, and his bread and butter is defensive backs. But he said, I like to structure my defense from the defensive line out. And he said, if you look at my track record, that's what I've done everywhere I've been. And part of doing that was making sure he got enough defensive linemen to rotate in and out. That was the other part of this. We could talk about the edge rushers that he's put out in the NFL. Dave, as you and I both know, Tennessee has had solid defensive tackles the last couple of years, but this is the first year where they're actually deep. They weren't able to rotate the way they wanted to when Tim Banks first took over in 2021.
Completely agree. And to Caleb's point, too, you don't think it makes him physically ill when he has to give up passing yards, knowing that it's helping burn clock and ultimately helping his offense, who has a big lead? I mean, it works at the end of the day, but there's no defensive coordinator that goes to the mic and go, oh, we gave up 42 points, but we got the win by 25. I mean, there's nobody that feels that way, Caleb. And to be able to take that, listen, I think you could make a strong argument. He is the 3rd most valuable person in their athletic department. I think it's Danny White because he hired Josh Heupel. And then after Josh Heupel, I think it's Tim Banks because, no offense to Rick Barnes, no offense to a guy named Tony Vitello, and people are going to get mad at me, but football is the revenue sport. The second most important coach, to me, is more important than every other coach you have out there. Do you agree or disagree with that, Caleb? As I remind you, we're brought to you in part by Quality Tire Pro. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. All work is covered by nationwide warranty. Cherokee Blvd or online, Quality Tire Pros. Stop by and tell them Dave Hooker said, hey, Bo. So, am I wrong that Tim Banks could be the third most valuable player in Tennessee's athletic department? Valuable person?
You make an extremely strong case. I could go Tim Banks or Rodney Garner. I don't know which one, but it's I agree with you with this with football. I used to say football is the engine that drives, like Fulmer said this, but I agree. In the athletic department, Fulmer's the engine that drives the car. Football's the engine.
And in the SEC, the front porch of the university. Don't forget that. Don't forget how much Alabama is just how much their enrollment as just simple students went up like 36% under Saban.
Well, that's my point. Yeah. I undersold football as the engine in a car, because in a car, in a gas car, the engine's important, but so are the brakes and there's so many other things that make a car run. Football is the battery in an electric car, which if you guys don't know, the battery is as expensive as the car itself in an electric car, because there is no electric car without the battery. So it's the heart of everything. Football's the battery in an electric car. In the SEC, your sports program is useless without football. And it's so important, Dave. Think about this for a minute. We talk about these FCS games. Your football program subsidizes lower level FCS athletic programs by playing a game against them every year. I mean, that's how crazy it is. And Tim Banks is absolutely that important. And there's a play, and I'm going to bring up a play real quick that let me know that Tim Banks.
And guys, I see you on the message board. We're going to address Rodney Garner. Keep going, Caleb. Sorry.
Yes, there's a play that made me realize Tim Banks is a step smarter than every other athletic defensive coordinator in college football. Part of this strategy of give up a lot of yards and make them work the clock, we can agree almost cost Tennessee against Florida in 2022, right? It was just one of those fluke things that happened. Florida gets an onside kick. Tennessee's like, oh no, we could blow this. What does Tim Banks do? Florida has a chance at a game-winning Hail Mary. Tim Banks didn't play prevent, did he? Tim Banks brought the house on Florida. I've never seen a coach do that. And I have called for coaches to do that since I've been like 12, Dave. I don't understand why coaches don't bring the house when it's a Hail Mary. It's so much. You're much more likely to get a stop if you bring the house than you are to play if you play prevent, right?
I can tell you why. I mean, philosophically, they were trying to milk clock. I'm not arguing with you on that one play. I would have done the same thing. But that's what Tim Banks has to deal with. Trevor says you could bring any old defensive coordinator to come in and coach aggressive as UT wants. The secondary has never improved, and Martinez should have been fired outside of 2021. I'm not that impressed. I'm not going to argue with you about Martinez. I'm not going to say that he should be fired. I don't call for people's jobs, but I think that is a real concern, and it has to get better this year, or you're going to have to do something. Now, we would be remiss if we talked about how great Tim Banks and the defensive ends were and the edge rushers if we didn't say Rodney Garner. I mean, Rodney Garner, for whatever reason, seems to really connect with a player. And I was having this conversation with John Adams, and I don't want to give anything away, but I think he's working on a column in that regard because it's been 40 years since Rodney Garner was a high school player. And he connects with those players. Guys, I'm not sure James Pierce would be at Tennessee if Rodney Garner hadn't connected with those players. So while we're extolling the virtues of Tim Banks, let's not forget Rodney Garner is a big factor as well. I get the sense, though, the reason I'm focusing on Banks, that Garner's comfortable and happy at Tennessee. One day, Banks wants to be a head coach, I would think. Everybody does.
Yes, I totally agree. Just to give Rodney Garner another one of the shout outs, one of the things that stands out to me about Rodney Garner as the defensive line coach is he's got the defensive tackles to willingly buy in to help fuel Banks' system with the edge rushers in a way that they're not going to get a lot of shine, which that type of sacrifice, the only time I remember Tennessee having a culture like that is in the 90s. I mean, Fred White, Dave, let's call it what it is. He's on our show. Fred White kind of sabotaged his own NFL career by willingly switching over to strong safety because he knew that's where Tennessee needed
Sabotage
him.
his chance in the Olympics.
Yeah, that's a good point.
People don't know that Fred White ran a 10-2 100-meter dash as a junior. I mean, he very well could have been an Olympic athlete and planned to be, and he showed up and they had a lot of corners, including Terry Fair, and they said, why don't you eat your way into safety? And he goes, okay. There's enough. Fred
How
also.
strong is the...
Go ahead.
How strong is the culture at Tennessee for Fred White to be so willing to do that in 95, 96? I mean, he made a huge sacrifice for the program.
Are you drawing a parallel?
I'm drawing it to nowadays. I feel like Amari Thomas, Elijah Simmons, Omar Norman Lott, these defensive tackles are making a huge sacrifice to fully buy into Rodney Garner's system where they're not going to get a lot of shine, honestly, because it's all about the edge rushers.
And I give NIL some credit for this. They don't feel like they have to stay healthy, Caleb, in order to be well off financially. If they're taking home, I don't know about you, but you might have come out of college with debt. These guys are going to come out and they've made, in a lot of cases, $1 million. I think I think culture should get better because Tennessee's taking care of its players.
Yes, I agree. That's a very good point. And this is what Josh Pate talked about the other day, right? Tennessee's not just offering the money up front. They're offering they're doing B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P for the NIL because they're thinking way beyond just offering the money to get the guy there. They're making sure that they feel well taken care of and supported when they're on campus. That's a great point. Look, Tim Banks, guys, you guys have to understand this. The defense took a way bigger hit than the offense with all the turmoil and turnover when Jerry Pruitt left in 2021. That was if the whole system looked like the defense, Josh Heupel probably would have been fired in year 3 because it would have been impossible to rebuild Tennessee. Is that fair to say, Dave?
Yes, I'll completely roll with that.
Yeah, it was a dumpster fire. The back end of the defense took the biggest hit, and it was and it's now because of the system Josh Heupel runs, it's really hard to recruit for those areas because let's be honest, Dave, if you're a cornerback looking to get to the NFL, you might play for Georgia for half as much as you would play for Tennessee because of Kirby Smart's going to make you look good. You're taking a big leap of faith, a big risk, and really potentially sacrificing your future if you play in Tennessee's system at cornerback as a recruit. I mean, you're going to have to accept giving up a lot of yards.
See, I don't think kids see it like that. From the people and I've changed my opinion on that over the past about the past recruiting cycle. I think that the kids want the ball thrown their way more often, and they want to be challenged. I think a lot of the special kids go to these 7-on-7 camps, and nobody ever throws their way. So I actually think I was 100% with you. Like, how are they going to get corners? You're thrown at all the time. But I believe they want to be thrown at until they prove they shouldn't be thrown at.
And see, this is why I love Dave, because you're a Gen Xer, right?
Yes.
Just turned 15.
Mm-hmm.
I am so sick of people being like, the younger generation of athletes don't want to do this. And Dave's like, no, the younger generation of athletes actually embraces the hard route more than the older generation. That's what you're saying.
The younger generation of football players is way more put together than my generation. I mean, a lot of my generation that played football are dead because of painkiller addictions. A lot of my generation couldn't deal with
They were
football. Victims, fair. A lot of my generation also turned to alcohol in copious amounts because they didn't know how to deal without football. Yeah, the generation. I mean, working with Cooper Mays and Jacob Warren has been such an eye opener. Not to get sidetracked. Tennessee with the 9th best college football playoff odds, and want to jump into that. It's brought to you by our good friends at Joe Neubert Collision Center. Neubert Collision Center is fantastic. 9th, how does that strike you, Caleb, initially?
And it kind of shocked me. And so for those who don't know, this is the ESPN Football Power Index odds. So this isn't the betting odds as the same. It's the Football Power Index odds. And Tennessee has, based on the ESPN FBI, which that factors in your schedule, who you're likely to beat and unlikely to beat, and who everybody else is likely to beat and unlikely to beat, and where you're likely to finish, and how likely you are amongst all that to actually be a college football playoff team in the end. Tennessee is number 9 with a 36.9% chance to reach the college football playoff, which is relatively impressive. I'll tell you what shocked me, Dave, on this. Tennessee is number 9. The highest ACC team is number 11, and that's Florida State at 35.9. And remember, there's 5 auto bids.
Wait, help me with the number. Like, who's number 1? Who has the best odds of making it?
The best odds is Georgia at 79.1.
Okay. So Tennessee, 39%.
Yeah.
I think that's a little low.
I think that's low too.
I think
that's low
where
too.
do you have to get to be 50-50 on this list?
So Oregon is number 2 at 76%. Texas is number 3 at 67.8%. Ohio State's number 4 at 67.2%. Penn State's number 5 at 59.1%. By the way, before you guys get mad about that, this is not about better teams. This is about who's likeliest to make the playoff. Penn State is going to do their typical 10-2, aren't they? Because of the Big Ten schedule. So that's why they're so high on the list. And
I would hope that the committee factors that in there, but yes.
Yes, they're going to do it. Notre Dame's number 6 at 59.1%. Alabama's number 7 at 57.2%. Missouri, and then it drops off. Then it collapses. Missouri's number 8 at 37.3%. And Tennessee's number 9 at 36.9%. I think the reason you have those top 7, Dave, and this is where it makes sense. There's 7 auto bids. There's 7 at-large bids. So that's where the committee is going to take the 7 best at-large teams. Period at all. So that's why you have this huge drop-off from number 7 to number 8. And so I think that's why Missouri falls to 37.3, Tennessee at 36.9, Oklahoma at 36.6 is number 10, and then Florida State at 35.9 is number 11, and Michigan at 28.5 is down at number 12. So again, the committee is very low on Michigan having a drop-off this year, and then number 13 is Clemson at 26.9, 14 is LSU at 25.3. I kind of stop at that point, but the highest, just to throw this in, Dave, guess who has the highest odds in the Big 12? Your head might explode on this one.
I do not know.
Kansas.
No way.
At 24%.
What are we even doing here? I mean, is this going to be the next 5 years or so? Is this going to be kind of a dark period in college football because we're including teams that shouldn't be included? Are we going to have a situation where you have a 12-team playoff and 4 of them are of the Kansas ilk? I mean, nobody wants that. That's why I hate automatic bids, Caleb.
I'm going to tell you why I disagree with you thoroughly. I like more auto bids. And here's why I like more auto bids.
They're like, that is total bullshit.
I like auto bids because auto bids at least keep the suspense alive in the regular season. Now you got me. I don't think auto bids are the 12 best teams, but the NFL has auto bids. 8 and 8 teams make the NFL playoffs all the time that win their division. And what it does is it adds to a level of fun. Here's the issue. If the more auto bids you have, the more suspense you put in regular season games. If you just take the 12 best teams, Dave, then nobody's going to care about going 9-3. Nobody in the SEC will care about going 9-3. Tennessee won't care.
But I'm fine with that.
I'm not. You really want so you know what? Why didn't Tennessee just rest their starters for Oklahoma, Alabama, and Georgia, and then just beat everybody else and go 9-3? Why even play the game?
Because they wouldn't be a definite college football playoff team if they did that. They could be 13.
If you got rid of auto bids, a 9-3 Tennessee is a lock to get into the playoff. A lock.
No, because that could be the third place SEC team.
It wouldn't be the third. If you had just 12 auto bids, the SEC would have 8 teams in the playoff. And the Big Ten would have 4.
So the Big Ten, I imagine it's Ohio State has the highest odds, right?
Yeah, and then nobody else. The Ohio State's at number 4 at 67%, and then Penn State's number 5 at 59%. Somehow Michigan is down at 12 at 28.5%. So Penn State has twice the odds Michigan has to the college football playoff.
Okay. I missed the day that you just had. I can't believe I'm saying that you had a BCS formula.
Thank you.
I can't believe you and I agree on all the things we disagree about. We agree on that. I think we both agree that people can do what if they join Hooker's Corner? That is win fantastic prizes. Let me tell you a little something about that. There you can order the book, Celebrate 98, The Untold Stories Behind the Tennessee Vols National Championship. Just click on that QR code. Is that what they call it nowadays? And also want to remind you that you can be a member of Hooker's Corner. So here's what we're giving away today. It is not too late because we will spin the wheel here momentarily. It's the John Henderson autographed mini helmet you see just over my shoulder. We will give that away today. Looking forward to that. We usually give it the last day of the month, but we forgot. So it's the first of the month. It's your opportunity to win a fantastic John Henderson prize. Also, if you want to join Hooker's Corner, what you do have to do to win that John Henderson prize, it's just $9.98. You get increased recruiting coverage, and you also get more interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun, which you can't get enough interaction with Caleb Calhoun. I've thought about just posting your public phone number. Are you comfortable with that, Caleb?
Sure, post it. There's a rapper, Mike Jones, who did that in a song in 2005. He posted his real phone number, 281-330-8004. Hit Mike Jones up on the low, and then like his phone blew up, and everybody called him. But
well, of course they did. I accidentally said my number. This is pretty bizarre. I accidentally said my number as a caller number once when I was on the radio. That was pretty stupid. I want to thank our friends Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, the Tennessee tradition? RickTerryJewelry.com. RickTerryJewelry.com. So, Caleb, if you were to redo this list, where would you have Tennessee among the teams most likely to make the college football playoff?
Let's go down the list. Let's go most or less likely real quick.
All right.
Georgia, number one. They're more likely than Tennessee.
Clearly, I would give them a big,
hey now,
you should be ahead of Tennessee.
Not because this team is better, but because of their level of competition and their likelihood of where they finish in the conference. Oregon, number two. I got them ahead of Tennessee.
you suck, you jackass.
No.
No, not better. Better chance to make the playoff because of level of competition and things like that. They actually have a better chance of winning the Big Ten than Tennessee does the SEC.
I don't think so.
Okay, fair enough. Number three, Texas. I got Tennessee above Texas. Y'all can call me crazy. Tennessee is better than Texas.
Hey now.
I'm going to go with you on that one.
Number four, Ohio State. I got Tennessee above Ohio State. They're going to collapse this year.
Hey now.
I'm taking back my Texas, but I'm going to agree with Ohio State. How about that?
Number five, Penn State, because of their schedule, and they'll get their typical 10-2, I think has a better chance than Tennessee just because of that.
But at some point, sanity has to come into the decision.
But what do you think, though? Do you think the committee, like, they're not going to leave out a 10-2 Penn State? The only reason they might is because I do think
wait, what if it's 10-2 Penn State, 10-2 Tennessee?
It's easily 10-2 Tennessee at that point. Easily.
Okay.
I'll tell you this. I'll go even further. 10-2, Penn State has to have a clear-cut argument over a team if they're going to get in the future. Look, I think Penn State's behavior with the Joe Pa scandal is going to be held against them for a long time by a lot of people. If I were on the committee, I'll admit to you guys, I would use that against them. If I was down to one or the other, I would actually keep Penn State out.
I understand the heinousness of that, but I don't.
The kids protesting for Joe Paterno to keep his job is one of the most. It's one thing to get caught, but for them to protest in favor of him and put a statue back up is one of the most despicable things. Like, you're honoring a guy who covered for a pedophile.
I'm not arguing with that. Please hit the like button. The other factor that Tennessee is going to have over another team, let's say it's them and somebody else for that 12th spot, is the excitement of their offense. I think that's going to be a monster factor. As remind you, each and every Wednesday, we're joined by Jimmy Himes. We appreciate that. Portions of the program brought to you by our good friend at Ray Varner Ford in Clinton. There's an SEC team that you should be worried about in recruiting. We'll discuss after this.
Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
That team that you should be concerned about in recruiting, easy for me to say, whether or not you're a Tennessee fan, a Georgia fan, or an Alabama fan, we'll discuss because they are making some news. But first, it is time for this day in Tennessee sports history. Caleb Calhoun on August the 1st. What do you got, sir?
12 years ago, on August the 1st, Candace Parker and Tamika Catchings helped the USA women's team improve to 3-0 in the Olympics by defeating Turkey. That was Turkey's only loss during the Olympics before the bracket tournament round happened. Candace Parker had gone on the heels of 2 straight double-doubles in the Olympics, which was the first time that had happened in women's basketball Olympics. And so made history, balled out. Gino Auriemma coached that team, and for whatever reason, because he's petty, he decided to kick her off the 2016 Olympics.
This day in Tennessee sports history brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. There's the QR code. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition? Go to rickterryjewelry.com. Be sure you've signed up for Hooker's Corner. If we can put that link in the description, or I'm sorry, in the message box, that'd be great. For Rick Terry's Grade 8 Garmin Challenge, you have to be a member of Hooker's Corner, but not a paid member. You can be free. Also a subscriber of the YouTube challenge, and we're giving away a Garmin worth over $1,000. Also, you'll get a look at our new newsletter, which could be coming out. I'll let that out there. More interaction with me and Caleb as well, but be sure you sign up for Hooker's Corner as soon as possible, because when we hit 8,000 subscribers, we're giving away that Garmin, and that is exciting. So Caleb sometimes surprises me. He did so at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting, and here it is.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Should Tennessee and other schools be worried about Auburn? Why Auburn? Why the Tigers, Caleb Calhoun?
Guys, Auburn is on an absolute roll on the recruiting trail. And as we've talked about Tennessee on the recruiting trail, rightfully so, because what Tennessee has done recently has been incredibly impressive. Just out of the blue, Auburn decided, you know what? We can do that. And Pastor Hugh Freeze is preaching those great Christian values, Dave. And players want to be a part of those Christian values of Hugh Freeze. And sorry, we're going to say something.
I sense some sarcasm as we both have some moral issues with Hugh Freeze. Looking at Auburn's commitment list, they have 1 5-star defensive lineman and Malik Autry. Those are the type of guys that will keep you in contention for championships. So go ahead and tell you that. However, I wonder how much it will actually factor Tennessee. A lot of their prospects are from Tennessee. Now, they went in to get Donovan Starr, a 4-star cornerback out of Ravenwood in Brentwood, Tennessee. I wouldn't be as worried about them going into Nashville as I would be worried about Auburn going into, given my history and covering recruiting, going in and competing for the same guys in the Atlanta area. For instance, they have the offensive tackle Tavares Dice from Fairburn, Georgia. They've got a kid from Alpharetta, Peachtree City. So that would be my bigger concern. Now, they also have a couple of guys out of Maryland, which Tennessee wants to go there as well. I think you want as little competition in Atlanta as you can get. Problem is that cat's out of the bag, Caleb.
Yes, and it's probably going to get bigger now because what Auburn has done recently is shore up a lot of their home area recruiting, beating Alabama for guys, which that momentum will translate nationally. So over a 3-day period from July the 27th to July the 29th, Auburn picked up 5 commitments. 4 of them were blue chips. 4 of them were from Alabama. They flipped an Alabama commitment in that time. And guys, it's not like Kalen DeBoer's not recruiting well. So the scary part, if you're Tennessee, you bring this up. This is all connected. These things aren't mutually exclusive. If Auburn is doing well on the recruiting trail in one area, they're going to do well elsewhere because guess what? Buzz travels. And other kids will see that school's doing well in recruiting. So recruiting momentum is a thing. Okay, like y'all can, it's not silly. Like you pick up, the more 5-stars you pick up, the more likely you are to pick up more 5-stars. And that's just how that works. Other kids get interested. Auburn, by shoring up their base and getting a top 10 class, becoming a top 5 caliber class, they're going to be more of a factor in Georgia going forward. And here's where it gets real scary. Dave, one of the ways Tennessee builds their program is to go into Georgia and get guys, but they try to pick off kids from Georgia. That's how Auburn's always built their program, right? Is they tried to pick off some kids away from the Bulldogs. If they start doing that consistently, watch out. There's just not enough room for everybody. There's not enough to go around. And
so are you suggesting this could be good for Tennessee because they win some battles against Georgia? Is that what you're saying? Excuse me?
I'm saying it could be bad for Tennessee because some battles they would win against Georgia, Auburn is winning against Georgia instead.
I agree. Yeah, so we're on the same page there. And I think that Auburn, it's just a nice little 2-hour drive from a lot of places in the Atlanta area. And you just don't want Auburn to be good. My question is this. What's the better recruiting pitch? Regardless of position, Josh Heupel says, I'm going to build something great. I'm going to win championships. Or is the better recruiting pitch that you get to play sooner if you come to Auburn because their roster is not great? I mean, I think ultimately that will make up a lot of prospects' minds. Now, do they get into the moral side of it? If they do, then I don't think you can be a big Hugh Freeze fan.
That's my question, is how much of a factor is that? Because look, Dave, you were covering him at Ole Miss. The moral side of it conned a lot of parents, didn't it?
Yes.
A lot of parents tried to steer their kids to Auburn because they loved, or to Ole Miss because they loved Hugh Freeze's. I know this, guys. Jonathan Kongbo seriously considered Ole Miss because of Hugh Freeze's fake moral stances that he took all the time. I think that I think it could work against him now, because let's be honest, there's nothing people hate more than someone who throws their morals and religion in your face, but that's a hypocrite about it. There's like nobody that's more annoying in America than somebody like that, you know? And so, I mean, I can't stand those type of people. I think what would hurt Hugh Freeze more is how this is documented, because this is actually what got him caught in the first place, is how he tried to lie to his players at Ole Miss to keep them locked into scholarships and throw his previous coach under the bus. All of that he knew was going to be proven false, but after it was proven false, the players were locked in and signed to Ole Miss anyway. So that willingness to trick players into making a decision about their future, that is where the negative recruiting should work, right? That this guy will lie to you and trick you into making a bad decision for your future to help himself.
That, and listen, if you don't have a burner phone that you can forward information about other, because you don't want to ever be the coach that brings up another coach's shortcomings. I had a very wise recruiter one time tell me, you never say you don't want to go there because blah, blah, blah. Then you're down 14 points. But I would have a burner phone if I were this coach at another school, whether it be Tennessee or wherever, and I would send him some of the more salacious things that were reported about Hugh Freeze from that burner phone. And then you wouldn't know it was me, but you saw it.
Yeah. What
That's probably, but back in the day, you'd leave a newspaper at their front door.
What if, and just something crazy like this, what if you have a younger sister and you send the story of Hugh Freeze at Briarcrest telling women to take off their shirts and sit in their brawl because they weren't in their proper uniform, and you got a younger sister and you're an athlete? All of a sudden, that would be a thing, wouldn't it? And so
I would think so. Was that widely reported? I've heard a lot of things about Hugh Freeze.
AL.com. Yes, AL.com reported it. And I'm just going to say Briarcrest was in Memphis. Hugh Freeze was coaching there when I was in high school. I knew a couple people that thought he was very, very creepy. And basically what would happen is they allege, and this is what AL.com reported was, women who went to high school at Briarcrest when he was there alleged that if they didn't have their proper uniform, one woman said she didn't have her proper uniform on, so he made her come into his office, take off her shirt, sit in her bra, and wait until her proper uniform shirt was brought to school.
Yeah, that seems inappropriate. Yeah,
I'm underage woman.
I'm not a big fan of that. Aside from that, which is a big aside, are you surprised that Auburn is as hot as they are? Auburn now number 5 in recruiting. I'm not, and I'm kind of ashamed of myself for not seeing it coming, because who was the master of paying players before it was legal? Hugh Freeze, who's always been a good talent evaluator despite all of his other issues that he might have. Hugh Freeze does like ankles. That's how he judges prospects. That's very true, Derek. I don't know if I said that or you got that from someplace else. We shouldn't be surprised. As a matter of fact, if you told me that Auburn in 3 years will be a recruiting juggernaut, and I define that by top 5 annually, or it will be an also ran, which I define as 5 to 25, I would have to take juggernaut.
I would too. And there's 2 factors that are going in. Maybe 3. There's actually 3 factors that are going into play.
We're both assuming that Hugh doesn't blow up his reputation again.
Yes, exactly.
That Chris Hansen doesn't walk up and say,
"Let's take a seat there."
Why don't you have a little seat up there? Why don't you sit down?
I'm so ashamed that I used to love watching that show.
What are the wine coolers for?
So there's a bunch of factors that play with Auburn. Whatever you think of Hugh Freeze, he runs a cutting-edge offense, and he will put receivers in the NFL. And so what we're talking about this, Dave, if you're an aspiring wide receiver, you want to play in that's an offense that you want to play in, right? Sorry, it is. And so there's that. There's the other factor of, now I don't think this is as big because you're not really caring about Auburn if you're thinking about character, but where they start going into Georgia, do you not think, and this isn't just Auburn, this is Tennessee, this is Alabama, this is other schools, Georgia, Kirby Smart maybe losing control of the program just a little bit, a little concerned about that. That could happen.
Well, I mean, I think everybody should be concerned about that if you're at Georgia.
Another big one, and here's
so you're saying Auburn is getting a foothold because parents are concerned about Georgia?
Yes.
That recency bias is having them line up.
They want to go play for pass for Hugh.
The lack of morality at one school, and they can't Google and not get the other. I'm going to say if a parent cares that much that he's going to know what Hugh Freeze did, just like you need to know about work trucks. They're all about trucks that are actually available. I love you, but that's a reach. Trucks.
I got a better one when you're done with this.
All right. Trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money, and we can't get that 10 seconds back from Caleb. The perfect work truck doesn't break down and has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do that. Contracting is about time, guys. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is also quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for work trucks. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with the Napa hide work bodies are installed. They've got cranes, dump trucks as well. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks. That's a fact. Remember, Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com, WorkTrucksLLC.com, Work Trucks with an X. Clinton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham, WorkTrucksLLC.com. Proud supporters of the Vols. All right, what's your other crazy one?
My other crazy one is not crazy, okay? It's one that's actually benefiting Tennessee too. Clemson's collapsing as a program. Auburn and Clemson fought for similar Georgia recruits all the time, and Clemson is falling apart.
I was ready to blast you.
That's hot.
But that's kind of good.
That's Hugh Freeze loves hearing Paris Hilton say that. But sorry. The other one I got to bring up is, look, they're still recruiting well. You and I are very impressed by what Kalen DeBoer is doing. But Alabama's not recruiting Nick Saban level because they're not going to recruit Nick Saban level. And so that means there will be at least a couple of Alabama kids that they can get that they wouldn't have otherwise gotten.
Don't forget this as well, that some of these recruiting analysts have big audiences in Alabama because they won, let me count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 89 championships over the past 10 years. So they're going to be higher rated than other prospects because it makes the fan base happier. And that's going to continue for a couple, 3 years until Kalen DeBoer flames out, which he may never flame out. But if he does, then it will adjust itself. But trust me, that happens.
That absolutely happened.
Happened with Lane Kiffin. Some of those guys got increased ratings because he was good to work with in the media.
And Lane Kiffin was a great salesman on how he signed like the greatest players ever that he wanted when he was at Tennessee. I will never forget that.
Yes. Travis asked an interesting question. Maybe we save this for tomorrow, but Clemson and Tennessee can't coexist. As champions, can they?
They haven't ever. I'm not so sure they can. Tennessee's fall is directly related to Clemson's rise, but it's not just Clemson. I want to be clear on that. It is I don't think, and I think you're with me on this, Dave, when things happen, it's not a binary, like this one thing happened and that changed everything, right? It was a collection of things. Tennessee's fall started when Mark Richt went to Georgia. That was the first step. Then Steve Spurrier went to South Carolina. Then Clemson got good under Dabo Swinney. And that combination of things, where could Tennessee go recruit? I mean, Clemson ended up stealing players out of Tennessee. That's more on Butch Jones. You lose T. Higgins, Amari Rodgers, and Trevor Lawrence all should have been Vols. There was no reason to lose those guys to Clemson. But that's going to go down as the biggest recruiting fail in Tennessee history. letting those three guys to go to Clemson and Clemson winning a national title with them.
We had that. We thought it was Randall Cobb or Patrick Willis, right?
That's the biggest recruiting miss by Tennessee ever. But this is like, these weren't misses. I think Butch Jones wanted them. He just lost out on them to Clemson. He lost out on T. Higgins. T. Higgins flipped to Clemson before Clemson even won a national title.
Oh, he did. Stat of the day is brought to you by our fantastic friends at I want to tell you about Joe Neubert Collision Center. Joe Neubert Collision Center. Neubert Collision Center has been around for over 15 years. That means a lot. And they bring you, not only do they bring you John Adams' appearance, but they bring you today the stat of the day.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
All right, Caleb, what do you got as far as our stat of the day?
Today is August the 1st, and we have to send a bit of a shout out to, for all the hell we give him, Dave, we got to send a shout out to Joe Milton, because August the 1st is 8-1. And last year against Texas San Antonio, Joe Milton had the longest run by a touchdown run by a quarterback in Tennessee history when he ran 81 yards for a touchdown.
Goodness gracious, that was quite the setup to get there. I was wondering how we were going to work Joe Milton into the program, but we managed to do that. 81 yards is the history, and that's your stat of the day, brought to you by our good. Yes.
Sorry. I want to send one quick other shout out with the 81-yard. Travis Henry's final run with Tennessee was an 81-yard touchdown run in the Cotton Bowl, lost to Kansas State in 2000.
Is that true?
Yep. The game where it was cold and Randy Sanders decided to only run it 17 times and throw it 30-something times.
Okay, click the like button right now and use that with your friends. Today's 8-1. You know, that just happened to be Travis Henry's last run as a Vol and the longest run as a quarterback in Tennessee football history, Joe Milton last year. Drop that on your friends, and I guarantee you, here's what they're going to say.
That's hot.
They will. They will think that is super hot.
A lot of different girls said that to Travis Henry without protection.
Sports Treasures carrying over 5 million. Sports Treasures, so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia. Daily updates. Facebook.com. Go to Sports Treasures TN. The SEC or Big Ten are battling it out. Caleb and I think they're both in pretty good shape. Maybe. Today's tough question is now.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
We ask you this question, and we want your thoughts on the message board. We'll put it on the poll question on YouTube. What will be the preeminent conference in 5 years, the SEC or the Big Ten? I believe we would all agree now it's the SEC, but Caleb, you seem to think that could change, sir.
Right now, and I want people to know this because I'm like some homer of a conference. Right now, it's not even close. The SEC is better. The Big Ten is closer to the ACC. The SEC is so much better than the Big Ten, even with the additions of the 4 schools that they added. The SEC is that the Big Ten added. The SEC is a significantly better conference, and it's a different level. It's AAA versus major leagues. Okay,
agreed.
That's going to change in 5 years, and it will be the Big Ten. And I'm going to tell you guys why. We've talked about this before in football and recruiting. NIL is the equalizer. NIL is the equalizer when you don't have a fertile recruiting ground in your backyard. It is the great equalizer. Now, Tennessee has the best NIL collective right now. No questions asked. No doubt. But when you factor in the Big Ten TV deal that comes into play this year, which is worth $7 billion versus the SEC TV deal, which is worth $3 billion, every single year. And by the way, for the Big Ten, that's a 7-year deal. For the SEC, it's a 10-year deal. Here's what that means. In TV revenue alone, the Big Ten will be bringing in $1 billion to distribute among 18 schools, whereas the SEC will be bringing in $300 million to distribute among 16 schools.
Okay, let's remember that is not that number is I don't believe going to affect what the schools actually spend, because I believe at some point there's going to have to be a cap put in place.
Not on NIL. You can't put a cap on NIL. It will affect. Here's where I'm going with
And
this.
if you have a union.
Yes, but there's a bunch of other factors, because NIL is not affiliated with the school. Technically, it's boosters. Boosters should be able to even like Dave, the NFL, the players have a union, so there's a cap on like the salaries, but they can make whatever money they want to make in endorsement deals. Like no one can sit there and tell LeBron James that you can't make $1 billion from Nike.
I'm going to tell you what I've been told in the last 24 hours, that within a year, all the NIL money is going to go through the schools. And at that point, I think they're going to ask the players to form some sort of union, and that's going to be the concession of there's some sort of salary cap. I don't see how there can't be a salary cap.
Okay, but here's the point. Okay, let's go back to it. The salary cap. The NCAA is not going to be the one running it. The conferences will. So the SEC will have a lower salary cap than the Big Ten, because the SEC will not be bringing in the money the Big Ten is. And where I'm getting at is that. So again, let's point this out, because people are going to question this. Can you agree with me on this? Even if NIL is not affiliated with the school, the amount of money a school brings in is relevant, because the amount of money a school brings in lessens the money that boosters have to donate, so boosters can then just spend that money on NIL. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. That's a lot of money, more money the Big Ten is bringing in than the SEC. And you're seeing this, by the way, specifically with coaches. Big Ten is basically, Dave, I got some reporting. The Big Ten is stepping in and borderline forcing schools to fire coaches, because they don't want schools to be complacent with their football programs up there. Don't think that may not have been a factor in Indiana firing Tom Allen.
Hey,
and what they're saying is
you got me to coaching, which is where I wanted to go. There is still something to be said for coaching in the SEC, and there will always be. And that is because unless you were born somewhere else, and even if you were born somewhere else, the South is the home of college football in particular, but football. And I think you'll always have the better coaches here, because I'm going to try to cut you off the pass here. Yes, Ohio State could offer $20 million and Tennessee could only match at 10. But I don't believe that's going to be the case. And if Tennessee had to keep a Josh Heupel or Georgia had to keep a Kirby Smart, I believe they would find a way to match that money. So I think coaches are always going to want to be in the SEC, and I don't think money will change their minds. Am I right or wrong?
I think you're wrong, because you're missing the fluid nature of college football. Dave, go back to the 1980s. The Big Ten coach, the SEC was maybe the home of college football. The Big Ten coaches were significantly better than SEC coaches for most of the 80s and the 90s. The SEC had a who's who of how the heck did you become a head coach during that time?
No, I agree. LSU was floundering around. Florida was floundering around. I think there's some Big Ten schools that are doing that right now.
Yes, but it's very fluid.
No, and I think they'll be challenged, but fluid, for goodness sake. I mean, I don't understand how the SEC can get that much better when they're adding a Texas and Oklahoma, when their schools have spent money to have these fantastic facilities. Everybody has them now, and I think they're going to match the money. I'll also say this. The big war daddy, the guy who's 6'5" and 330 pounds and remind you of Vince Wilfork, those guys are more oftentimes found in the South, and they win championships. We saw what Alabama did to Notre Dame in that college football playoff. That was based off interior line play on both sides.
No, yes, also because Ohio State was on probation and couldn't go that year because Ohio State was undefeated. Remember, Alabama would have beaten Ohio State, not the way they beat Notre Dame. Manny Diaterio was distracted by his fake girlfriend too. Okay. Where I'm getting at though is this. You are right. Way more war daddies in the South. That's why they win more championships. That's what I missed 10 years ago. So I don't know if you remember 10 years ago when Ohio State won the national title and Jim Harbaugh was going to the Big Ten. and James Franklin was building up Penn State, many people said, you know what? The Big Ten's about to compete with the SEC. Because remember, Michigan State was rolling during that time too?
Yes.
And many of us thought the Big Ten was actually going to compete. Well, they didn't win another title until this year. Why? What you brought up, the War Daddies. Harbaugh took forever to break through. Urban Meyer ended up getting in a scandal again and resigning and faking some other illness. Michigan State fell apart because of the Larry Nassar scandal, and they still have not recovered from that.
And it's not like you can go out and pay $2 million to a quarterback and get the perfect fit. You don't need just one or two. You need about four of them. We've talked about rotations and injuries before. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes. I think the Big Ten money and revenue difference is so substantial, and I mean so substantial, that it neutralizes the location advantage the SEC has of the War Daddies, because they're going to be able to start coming to Georgia and Florida and offering twice as much as Georgia and Florida and Alabama offer theirs, and Tennessee offer those kids. And that's what's going. So that's going to neutralize it, because you're right. Right now, Big Ten coaches, SEC coaches are better. Kalen, 3 of the 4 college football playoff coaches are in the SEC now, and Kalen DeBoer, Kirby Smart. I can just go down the list. The Big Ten is floundering. Ryan Day is. You and I think he's fired after this year. Lincoln Riley's in big trouble at USC. I think the best coach of the Big Ten may be Dan Lanning at Oregon right now, but I would say that's fluid. Dave, the setup of coaches is very different in 5 years. The Big Ten could have the best coaching group in 2028, and you're already seeing this at smaller schools. Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. Luke Fickell is one of the best coaches in football, and I you know what? Wisconsin is about to have the money to keep him from ever going to an SEC school, and I'm telling you, that's the issue. Iowa, Big Ten is going to step in and force Iowa to fire Kirk Ferentz. Watch.
Okay. I was hoping you would get to that. Here's an issue with that. Iowa's fine. I have sources at Iowa, coincidentally. Iowa's fine with what they're doing. Making a Citrus Bowl, getting hammered by the Vols. That's fun to them. They don't have the same mindset that our listeners do, where it's win a championship or bust, basically, which it is with most SEC fan bases. So are you going to tell Iowa that their philosophical approach to how they put together a football team is wrong? Because they're going to come back at you and say, no, we're not going to spend all this extra money in football. We might spend it on our writing department, which is their post-grad writing department, for reasons I don't want to explain, is the best in the nation. So
their wrestling team.
Yeah, or their wrestling team. But point is, you can take it and stuff it. We're good with making it and playing Tennessee every once in a while. We know we're never going to beat Ohio State and Michigan. At that point, aren't you at the point where it's time to take the best 32 and we're not having a Big Ten SEC discussion? Because Vanderbilt's not going to be able to do it. They're too far behind. Some programs, South Carolina's not going to up and do it. There are a lot of programs in both conferences that aren't going to up and do this. So at that point, just build your 32.
So Iowa, you may have a point, because Iowa, it's like that's kind of knowing what you are. Like Mississippi State knows they're not a national title program. They get a coach that can be very good. Maybe I was wrong on speaking on Iowa.
In Mississippi State, when Mississippi State and Ole Miss were 1 and 2, do you remember it was on the front page of this magazine called Sports Illustrated? Our friend Andy Staples wrote it. I mean, that was a big deal. So Mississippi State fans are probably fine with that. They were fine with Mike Leach and his exciting offense.
Okay, I agree. And maybe that is what Iowa is. But here's the thing. Nebraska won't be content with that.
I agree with you there.
And I don't think Wisconsin's going to be content with that. Oregon has never been content. They're still mad that they can't. Like, Oregon has always been trying to get to that next level, have they not? Like, Phil Knight wants to see them reach that level before he dies, and he will open checkbooks. And now there's Big Ten revenue. USC's not content with that. Do you not agree that Lincoln Riley's probably fired after this year by USC? They don't like him in LA.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance of that. I want to go back to something you said about Phil Knight. Phil Knight may spend all the money in the world with Oregon, but Tennessee's a Nike school. And all those schools need to remind him that him spending money on Oregon is fine, but he doesn't need to be a major donor or stroking 9-digit checks He can be a donor, but he doesn't need to turn them into a team that's going to beat everybody else that pays him money.
Okay, fair enough, but he still might do that. Another crazy part, but David,
Would you agree with that? I mean, I didn't mean to get sidetracked, but
no,
that's always been funny to me.
They haven't been able to stop it to this point. And here's the other one. I'm just going to say it. Because he's the ultimate troll on Twitter, he might do this. What if Elon Musk decides he wants to get involved in college football? He's a Rutgers grad. And what if he says, I'm going to spend all the money in the world to make Rutgers a powerhouse in football? I am opening a checkbook. Elon Musk would do that and just say, I'm going to buy talent at Rutgers and make Rutgers a powerful program.
I can provide a little bit of insight to that. So I saw that happen at Maryland, where the
Kevin
the
Plank.
guy Under Armour,
Mm-hmm.
where and he got excited and statute of limitations, I guess, bought some players and got them, and that was all well and good, but he quickly realized that while he may think he's a mega booster, and I think of Under Armour as a big brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not with the same level of let's use Tennessee, the pilots of the world that are selling oil.
But Elon Musk is on that level, though. Elon
Right.
Musk is worth
That's what.
200
Right.
Yeah.
That's what would be exciting. What I would pay to see, and we'd have maybe a daily segment on Elon's world. How's the oblong ball treating him?
And there's another layer, by the way, you have to say this with Maryland. And I'm close to the program for those, as you guys know. They also hired a terrible head coach in Randy Edsall, who did not know how to manage the talent that Kevin Plank, basically bought him on the low end.
Let's be careful with Randy. Used to always watch me on Facebook. You can tell who's watching you on Facebook. Randy Edsall used to always watch me. I would just stop and say, "Hi, Randy."
And the other hard part was you couldn't openly buy players during that time. So it's a little different now. I'm telling you, though, that money is going to start rolling in with the Big Ten, and they will be openly buying players. Look, let's take the Northeast for a minute. Let's just take Elon Musk and Rutgers and the Big Ten money. Football is embedded in the South. You are right. But if one school got all the good players from the Northeast, I mean, there's not a lot of them, but if you got all of them to go to one school, they could compete, right?
Are you including the DMV, that little area?
Yes, DC to Boston, just all the good players.
No doubt. Now I question whether or not they have the same passion for players from other areas, but
right.
Worry about that when you get to the championship game, right?
Yes. What if Rutgers determined we can had a monopoly? They just got every single good player from DC to Boston.
Elon Musk could have Rutgers winning a championship within 5 years.
You don't think that's on their radar, doing that?
Do I think it's on Rutgers' radar or the Big Ten's radar?
The Big Ten's Rutgers and Elon Musk. The Big Ten added Rutgers for a reason. They wanted the New York market.
I don't know that it's on Elon Musk. I mean, Elon Musk has a lot going on, right?
Please, he just sits there and trolls people on Twitter. He just trolls people on Twitter. Someone should be like, "Hey, Elon, go buy a college football team and just see if you can make him a national title contender." And he would do it just because he does that type of stuff. So I'm just saying that something like that, and the Big Ten revenue, the money the Big Ten's bringing in, again, the SEC. Greg Sankey may have told you that the SEC contract is not ironclad. Maybe he's right.
No, he didn't. He didn't tell me that. I got the read off that. I don't want to miss. Yeah.
He's giving off the read and the vibe to a lot of people that it's not ironclad. That's like when a politician who's losing an election gives off the read, like, well, my internal polling shows I'm going to win. That's hopeful and wishful thinking. Okay. It's the same way Florida State tries to tell us the ACC contract they're in is not ironclad. We had T. Scott Jones on. He's like, no, that thing looks ironclad to me. And so, I mean, that is very wishful thinking. And I have to be honest, that Big Ten contract can push the Big Ten schools will be the Yankees. The SEC schools may end up being the Athletics.
Okay. I can roll with that. It is time to give away an incredible prize. Tell me what you think about John Henderson, because I know you are a huge fan of John Henderson, before we give away this fantastic prize.
I my brother and I both, and I know you covered Eric Berry, Dave, but we both got really triggered when there were suggestions to retire Eric Berry's number, because I said you can't retire his number before John Henderson's. And whatever you think about Eric Berry, he did leave after his junior year. John Henderson was a defensive tackle, limited window to make money. I don't know his background story, but I'm pretty sure he didn't grow up with Peyton Manning type money, and chose to come back for his senior year just so he could beat Florida. That is like, he is a two-time All-American, an Outland Trophy winner, a defensive tackle who was one of the best. Like, if you had like a Mount Rushmore best leaders of a team, John Henderson's on that list in Tennessee history. He was Al Wilson level of a leader.
That's pretty strong. I covered John Henderson. I didn't have as strong feelings about him as that.
You didn't think he was the leader of that team? By far the emotional leader.
He was kind of quiet.
But he got hyped. He would hype you up.
He did. I'm just giving you a hard time. All right, here's the helmet. So if you haven't subscribed to this point, go ahead and do so. Hit that like and subscribe button. But also, if you want to get in underneath the radar, we'll share this with you. You can join Hooker's Corner for just $9.98 a month. You will get more interaction with me and Caleb. You will get more recruiting, as we like to do that, cover the recruiting because the kids like it. Here's the helmet, the John Henderson autographed helmet. We are going to spin the wheel, as I will do that right now. Typically, we do this the last day of the month, but frankly, I forgot. So here we go. There are the names. We spin now. You guys have called that spinner something bad that I'm not going to refer to. And congratulations, Michael. Michael, you are our big winner. We will get that prize to you. I will reach out to you via Hooker's Corner, where you can join right now. Caleb, if we could put that in the message base one more time as I move your name all around and your face. Losing your face, and you're such a good-looking guy. He's who gets the ratings, no question about that.
I'm going for the 90s boy band look. How am I doing?
Could use a trim. Want to thank our friends at Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Other lawyers say they'll go to trial. They won't. They'll settle and settle for less. Banks and Jones, ready to go to trial for you. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney. Why settle? Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones at banksandjones.com. Tell them that Off the Hook Sports with Caleb Calhoun and Dave Hooker sent you. Have a fantastic afternoon, evening, middle of the night, whenever you're watching. And we do respond to your comments, so please leave them for us. I'm addicted to it. I think it's fun. He's Caleb. I'm Dave. Have a fantastic